It is 6:30, so if you're going to be joining the meeting, please take a seat.
For now. Yeah, just hold on.
Kirsten, are they using their inside voice?
No, they are not. They are very loud right now. It's like they have their own.
Oh, hello. All right, it is 6:32, so I am going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Oh, here it is. I'd like to announce that this meeting of the Seguin Independent School District has been duly called, and notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meeting Act, Section 551.043 of the Texas Government Code. Mr. Jenkins will be leading us in the pledges this evening.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to E Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
All right, I'll give everybody a bit of time for a moment of silence. Okay, I would like to welcome everybody here this evening. It's good to see some of you spaced out and wearing masks. I don't know how we look to you, but for us looking out at you, for one thing, we're happy to see you. And it's always a good sign when we're following protocols. First up, we have Dr. Gutierrez's announcements. Dr. Gutierrez?
Good evening, trustees and Seguin ISD community. The much-awaited first day of school in Seguin ISD was September the 8th, and I'm pleased to report that the day was pleasantly smooth across the district. I had the pleasure of visiting campuses and was so happy to see many of our students back in our schools. Overall, approximately half of our students are back in school for face-to-face learning, while the remainder are at home for virtual learning opportunities. The positive start to school has continued into Week 3. As expected, we have had instances of confirmed COVID cases and quarantines, but the numbers remain manageable thanks to the diligence of our teachers, campus administrators, and students. Our COVID statistics are posted on the district website and updated as needed. We have been working closely with the city and county on possible CARES Act funding to help support our COVID expenditures. Last week, the Seguin City Council approved allocating nearly $60,000 to Seguin ISD. The Texas Education Agency will match this amount dollar for dollar, which will result in full reimbursement of $118,000 for COVID-related technology expenses. I am so thankful to our city's decision to invest in our children. Many other districts are not getting the support we are from their city and county governments. Special thanks to City Manager Steve Parker, the Seguin City Council, and Mayor Don Kyle. The much anticipated first varsity home football game in our new Matador Stadium is Friday night. Our Bond Oversight Committee members toured the stadium yesterday, and based on their feedback, we have a great new facility that is poised to serve future generations of Matadors and fans. Ticket sales have been brisk and are limited due to COVID safety issues. I encourage all of our fans to enjoy our new stadium safely by practicing social distancing and wearing a mask. Go Matadors.
All right, thank you, Dr. Gutierrez. Next up on our agenda is item 2A, which is Student Staff Board Community Recognition, and Dr. Gutierrez has an award that he will be giving out.
Tonight, it is a special privilege to recognize an individual who has made a tremendous impact on the district in the last few months. This employee spends countless hours working with teachers, parents, and students across the district to ensure that we communicate effectively. Beyond communicating effectively during COVID, this individual has dedicated many years of service to serving the students of Seguin ISD and helping to ensure that we have a quality dual language program. Her dedication to our district goes well above the call of duty. Recently, she spent her entire weekend organizing and decorating a classroom so that students could walk into a decorated room. She assisted our communication efforts during the COVID school closures by translating news releases, notices, and other documents from English to Spanish. She leads with her heart and exemplifies what a servant leader should be. This special employee is in her 34th year with the district and has worked as a paraprofessional for 6 years, a teacher for 23 years, and as a campus professional and central office staff member for 5 years. Please help me to congratulate the September 2020 Apple Award winner, Maggie Rodriguez, multilingual education specialist.
Talk about in the photo too.
You know, guys, we had to do it since the kids couldn't be here. Very careful.
Forget.
Yes.
Congratulations, Maggie. It's very well deserved. Moving on in our agenda, we have item 3, which is audience with the board, and we did not have anyone sign up this evening, so we'll continue on to item 4, which are reports and information items. And first up, we have our No Place for Hate campus designations. Ms. LaFleur.
So this one's a little different. First of all, this is kind of momentous because this is the 5th year that Seguin ISD has been a No Place for Hate district. So that was shocking to us all when we realized that 5 years have gone by. So normally we bring all the counselors up, but we're not doing that tonight because of COVID. Oh. And I'm not getting too close to the microphone either. This is our 5th year. And what this is our initiative that we have with the Anti-Defamation League. And what it involves is each one of our campuses, which is led by each one of the campus counselors, And they work with the students at their campus to determine what No Place for Hate is going to look like on their campus every year. So it looks a little different every year. And they have to come up with at least 3 activities that involve a large percentage of their students that bring out what No Place for Hate stands for. So what that is, of course, is promoting kindness, anti-bullying, and anti-bias and prejudice. So that's what gets worked in, and usually it's a fun activity. They're always fun, and so the kids are learning something as they're having fun. So some of these are within the school, like during lunches, and some are after school and different activities, but it's just a nice way to promote what the Anti-Defamation League has set up every year. So who we have with us, first of all, for our pictures, we had all of the elementary campuses, and that's one of their activities. And there's so many pictures to choose from, it's kind of hard to pick which ones, but I wanted ones where you saw just a few students interacting. And of course, pre-COVID, it's very strange to see pictures of kids so close together without masks, so that's interesting too. But just rest assured, these were prior to March. And then the next slide is our secondary schools. And then we are, once again, a No Place for Hate district, and that is really something to be proud of, that each one of our campuses district-wide manages to do this. And last year was a little peculiar because it ended, and some of those activities were scheduled for after spring break time, but they went remote. And so they were able to submit those and still get the designation. And this year's conversations about what the activities are going to be are going to look a little different as well. So all the counselors, if you would stand up and unroll your banners. And so now when you go to the campuses, you'll be able to see 5 banners throughout the district.
So the first school years are already done.
They should be, yes.
We're not gonna take our big picture.
We can go take a big picture, but do you have any questions while we're all still in the room? Yay!
Thank you so much, Counselor, for all that you do. This is so precious stuff. Next up, we have an information item from Mr. Hilberg. It's matters for consideration when evaluating alternatives to the TRS active care.
Hello. Hopefully, is this, can you hear me okay? Is it, okay. I'm not used to hearing myself through a mask, I guess. So not too long ago, there was a question posed as to possible options for Seguin ISD for an alternative to TRS Active Care, which is the health insurance arrangement for our staff here at Seguin ISD. And then COVID-19 hit, and we kind of set that aside for a little while, but really in retrospect, if ever there's been a real need to be cognizant of what our options are, certainly it would be now. And so I don't want to paint a picture for you. I want you to draw your own conclusions. But I do also want to make sure that you're aware of what is involved if we were to go down this road. I have with me tonight our employee benefits specialist, our only employee benefits specialist for the district, and that's Ms. Terry Salinas. And she works tirelessly for all of our employees, not just for health insurance, but for all the other forms of voluntary insurance. So I do want to recognize her for a moment for her efforts. She's in the very back there, a little shy, I guess. And next to her, you'll also see that's Brent McConico. He works with our third-party administrator to ensure that all of our premium payments for the various products, as well as the investment products that we offer our employees, that those get to the providers and the various carriers for those services. So I have both of the experts here in case we decide to dive into some deep questions. But more on a 10,000-foot scope, if you will, there are some legal implications that we have to understand first. And so in the agenda item, I've tried to lay those out in those first 5 bullet points, and I'll just briefly summarize what that's telling you. And this is the way boiled down version of the legalese that are truly involved and that are under the surface here. But the bottom line is that school districts have 2 authoritative issues to look at when it comes to health insurance. One is the education code, and then second is the insurance code. And they're very distinct, but they're interrelated in some respects. And so when it comes to the education code, school districts have opportunities to ask for certain exceptions if they are a district of innovation. And Seguin ISD, as you know, is a district of innovation. And so because of that, there are certain exceptions that Seguin ISD can ask for as they relate to the Texas Education Code only. Seguin ISD, regardless of what type of district it is, may not ask for any exceptions as they apply to the Texas Insurance Code. Now, an interesting component of this is the fact that it is the Education Code that has forced districts to comply with the Insurance Code. But once you opt in to TRS Active Care, it's the Insurance Code that then says you cannot opt out. It's not the Education Code. Make sense? I'm glad it makes sense to you because it's very confusing to me. But the bottom line is, as a district of innovation, we do have an opportunity to ask for an exception with the Education Code, and the underlying issue with the Insurance Code is that we can't we can't opt out of TRS Active Care, but we can possibly offer an alternative. And that we can possibly offer an alternative comes with some caveats, because there are no guarantees that you can do that. There are some districts out there that are testing the waters, but there isn't enough information coming back yet as to how successful they are going to be. Even if you were able to do it for a year or so, that doesn't mean that the coast is clear. So we don't have a lot of precedents to work on here. So obviously we need attorneys involved if we're going to go down that road. And we're not afraid of that. We work with attorneys all the time. But you just have to understand that there are some hidden costs that we need to expose and be aware of that we can incur as a district if we are going to look at an alternative to the current arrangement. And it would only be an alternative. Again, we're not opting out. We're simply adding to. And it's that adding to that creates the complexities from a financial standpoint. Because as I mentioned, Ms. Terry Salinas is the only individual we have in our district that is managing, in conjunction with our third-party administrator, all the district's various insurance products with all of the individuals, including their families. And so that is a very taxing job in and of itself. If we were going to look at adding a new, very complex component, health insurance being the most complex, it's not unlikely that we would need to look at least some additional staff for her. It may be a half part-time person, a full FTE. It's hard to say right now, but we have to be aware that that's a real possibility. Now, in addition to that, we have to look at how are we going to go out and procure an alternative plan. And it's not like if we go for our own family. This is a group plan, and when you're talking about a group plan, it's far more extensive and a lot more work is involved to come up with a plan that will work and is affordable for your pool of individuals. Granted, TRS Active Care is not the least expensive insurance program out there. Any given family might say that. But the given family that says that is probably basing that off of what that given family might be able to procure for themselves under that particular family's circumstances. But when you look at all of the families within the state of Texas that are contributing to the pool for TRS Active Care, they blend it all together. That large pool actually does help the majority, but there are going to be those that are adversely affected if they choose to opt in to the TRS Active Care plan. That being said, when you shorten the number or reduce the size of the pool, which is in fact what we would do if we were to go to our own plan here at Seguin ISD, now what you've done inadvertently is created a more variable plan as a result of any one given family or small group of families that might contribute to a large number of claims. And so you don't get to water it down, if you will, with a whole lot of healthy families. Now, how will it shake out with Seguin ISD? Could it be that the demographic at Seguin ISD is better than the overall demographic and a relative amount of claims that are in the large pool of TRS Active Care? It's possible. It really is possible. Will it stay that way for all eternity? I have no idea, as no one would. But the volatility of the plan from year to year because of the smaller pool is certainly going to be more extensive if you bring it down to just the given district. Now, how do you mitigate that? Well, one of the things you've got to do is consider, are you going to have a fully insured plan or a self-funded plan? Now, on the surface, a self-funded plan may seem like it would be less expensive to the employee. A self-funded plan, basically what it is with the assistance of a third-party administrator or some other administrative arm, you fund what you cover. So you've got 1,200 employees and their families, and they fund into that based on a given level of participation. There are a lot of opportunities there, but you can only imagine the complexity that gets involved once you start thinking about, well, who's going to accept this plan? Where can they go? What do we charge in terms of premiums? There's a whole lot of background work that needs to come into play with that. And no matter what you do in terms of all that analytics, at the end of the day, you only have in the plan what you brought into the plan. Now, there are some extenuating issues with that, and I know that Brent McConico is back there saying, Tony, don't go that far down into this road with them. Because it is more complicated than that. Just because someone gives $50 to the plan doesn't mean the plan only has $50. But in a nutshell, that's basically where you are. And so because of that, you have to purchase additional insurance on top of the health insurance. Stop-loss insurance is what it's referred to. Many of you have heard of it before. And that's intended for unexpected catastrophic claims, either individual claims or claims in the aggregate. Now, the district would have to foot the bill for that additional insurance, and that additional insurance, it can vary, and so I can't give you exact estimates, but even as of just a few years ago, it would not be uncommon to see a stop-loss plan for an aggregate typical plan, like what we would see for Seguin ISD, to be somewhere between $35 and $60 per employee, participating employee. Now, that's, it could be as much as $6,000 per month. I'm talking about per month. And that is a cost that you might be able to pass on to the employee. But now if you go through all the legwork to find a plan that's self-funded, and then you also have to add an additional $35 to $60 a month on the plan, in addition to what the plan premium is, now you see how the playing field starts to level out. Is it really more cost-effective to administer our own plan? Now, that's on a self-funded plan. There's also a fully insured plan, and that is basically what one of us would get if we went and covered ourselves individually. We're not going to have a stop-loss plan outside there. You're going to go to an insurance company. They're going to tell you this is how much we're going to pay after a certain amount. We'll pay 80%, just a hypothetical example. And we'll do it in perpetuity for the year, or whatever the caveats are that they throw in. That's a fully funded plan, and you can get that. But rest assured that there's no insurance company on the planet that's going to give you a plan like that without protecting themselves So they're going to bury that into the premium to the district. So those plans are significantly more expensive because they're going out, in effect, getting their own stop loss coverage, one way or another. That's in essence what they are doing. Another trick or another tricky issue with going out and looking for an alternative plan, should we decide to do that, is TRS is not obligated and does not, for districts our size, provide claims data for the prior year or years. Now that's really significant because what the scenario is that paints for us as a district is if we start now and we start going to the different providers of insurance and asking them to give us some quotes, just to start the conversation, how do we get here? The first thing they need is, what does your pool look like? What does the claims data look like for your population? And if they can't get it, then they have to guess. I'm sure they've got some analytics that they can run and they can figure some things out, so it's not a wild guess, but it's not going to be purely scientific. And because of that, it's possible that they will way overshoot or way undershoot, and if they really want our business, they'll probably way undershoot our claims estimates for the year that they're bidding on. Now that might be great for the first year, but then the second year we may see astronomical increases in premiums. We may also see astronomical increases in premiums even if they did have the claims data, simply associated with the fact that our pool is significantly smaller and just a couple of claims, large claims, could really add to the carrying cost the following year. There's also the inevitable issue of competitive nature of these organizations. They want our business. They have an opportunity to get it in the first year, and they may be very aggressive. Not so much if it doesn't prove profitable. And again, it's very difficult to throw all these things out here and come across as being unbiased. It's very difficult. But the reason is because I think it's very easy to have the feeling that the grass is greener on the other side. And I don't necessarily say that it's not a possibility. I really don't. I think there is a possibility that the district could offer something. I'm just not so sure that there is either. I really just don't know. And I want you to kind of feel where I am with this. A lot of work would have to go into this to finally decide yes or no. And a lot of work could go into this, and then you just decide there's just no way. We can't provide anything competitive. And when it comes to a decision like this, no one person can make it. There's just no way. You've got to have an insurance committee. And prior to 2008, the district was a self-funded plan. So it's not like we don't have history. And I worked for the district back then. So, I mean, we've got some experience with what's involved here. And we managed it for many years back then. So we know what the process is. But we also know what the process is. And it is very time consuming, very analytical, and very detailed, and requires the efforts, hard work on the part of a lot of people, which we're not afraid of. But what we're very concerned about is, at the end of the day, do we end up deciding that it just wasn't worth it? And that worries me. That really worries me. I want to do what we can for the district. I know that's what you want to do for the employees. I know that's what Dr. Gutierrez wants. That's why we've reached out to Bob Wardell, and I really want to express appreciation for their assistance in this, TASB's assistance in this, Mr. Monaco's assistance in this. The things I'm sharing with you now is a collaborative effort. And so I've probably extended beyond what a normal information item should. And I apologize for that, but be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Deacons?
Give us some background on why we're looking at this right now.
I think it's come up on a couple of occasions, and so it's not uncommon for even employees to bring it to my attention. Why don't we offer something else? You know, I could do better on my own. And so.
I've heard that myself with employees here, but, benefits can be one of our biggest recruitment tools, and I think it is important to look at other options, at least to be able to say we have, so.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see what we come up with and what the cost is looking for.
You said there were some districts that were kind of piloting, looking at other options. They're in their first year, second year?
First year.
First year.
So I don't know.
This would
that
be the
it's,
first year, or last year?
1920 would have
19 to
been.
20,
Mhm.
okay.
I have a list of several. It's a little bit of a touchy subject because the information I have is coming through an attorney. So the attorney would be a little concerned if I were to reach out to them independently and ask for some things. So I don't have a lot of detail yet, but we'll work those avenues out. And when we can get a good line of communication going with one or more of those districts, I'll be sure and provide that information. But at the moment, I don't have anything in terms of how they're doing.
Mr. Guerra?
Thank you for the information. That was a lot of information. One of the things that I wasn't aware of is the claims data for the Seguin Texas School District. Do you know how long this option has been available to the DOIs?
Well, I believe the District of Innovation plan, you know, the crux of that is simply that you can ask for various exceptions from the education code. So since we became a District of Innovation, the opportunity for this has been available to us as a district. Now, we have other experts in the room that may be able to speak to that, but generally, yes.
So when DOIs came into effect in 2017, so it's just, as districts were planning, this wasn't one of the priorities, and so now you're just seeing districts that are exploring this possibility, and just the information that Mr. Hilberg has provided is a lot to take in and a lot to process. So what we felt would be important is to keep the board updated along the way on progress, because if we were to wait 2 months down the road or at the end, it's a lot to try to process and understand. So we'll come back to you regularly as we continue to work through this. And it's also important for our staff to know that we are listening, trustees are listening, administrators are listening, and for them to know that we are exploring other possibilities. And I think that's important, and especially during a time when a pandemic is at the forefront, and healthcare, because of that pandemic, is also at the forefront. And we wanted to make sure that this was a discussion that was public and that our staff was aware we were having.
I think that's the right approach, doing at least once a year, just revisiting. Now, since you've been here, I know you've been here for quite some time, has the district ever looked at other sources? I think when you're tied in with TRS, you're tied in, my understanding. So this is the only time they've offered a window. So
Well, in terms of an alternative plan, we actually have done a little bit of research on another option. That one was not your traditional insurance type of program, and we would, in essence, be putting such an administrative burden on individual employees that we felt like it just wasn't fair. We have a large number of employees that would have a lot of trouble administering their own claims, asking for reimbursement after the fact. So while it was a fairly inexpensive offering, it could get someone in a lot of trouble financially if they weren't managing it very carefully. And that's coming from me. Even for myself, I would be worried for it. That's not to take away from the efforts of those that provide that plan. I just don't feel like for Seguin ISD, as a whole, people might be getting into something that they weren't fully aware of, and once they did, they could really learn the hard way. And that's a personal recommendation. I'm more than happy to concede to how others feel about it, but I think that if we were to get into the nuts and bolts of it, you'd see why I felt that way.
Ms. Crittenden, have we gotten feedback from employees on how they feel about the current thing?
You know, for that, let's, I promised Terry and Brent that I would try not to get them involved unless absolutely necessary, but I don't actually communicate with the employees in terms of how they feel about the benefits plan. So maybe they can give a little bit of.
And I think one thing to keep in mind is that many of our employees are aware that we've been locked in now. Was it 2008?
2008 was when we opted out of
So
TRS.
they know that there were no options. So many aren't going to provide feedback because whether they've been in another district, most districts do utilize TRS. So that feedback is probably not to the level that it would be just because it's all that we've been part of for so long.
So the question, Terry, maybe for you is just overall, what do you feel like has been the receptiveness on the part of employees regarding our current health care plan?
This year, I really haven't heard any complaints about the plan. This year, they did switch from Aetna to Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they got rid of their select plan, which was the big trigger for the last couple of years. Was the issue was a lot of doctors and the hospital not being in network with that select plan. That plan is gone. So what they did is they opened up a primary plan and a primary plus, which is a statewide network. And I really, this year, I haven't heard a lot of complaints. I haven't heard a complaint about the insurance this year.
So the doctors, they can go to doctors here in Seguin?
Yes,
in the
ma'am.
hospital here?
Yes, they can.
Excellent. Oh my goodness, I did not know that.
Yeah, so that select plan that was tied to a health network is gone this year. The primary plan is still tied to a network, but it's a statewide network.
Okay.
And so they can still see doctors here in town, they can use the hospital. They just have to be in network, but for the most part, a lot of our doctors here in Seguin are in network.
That should really help.
Yeah.
And that plan, for employee only, the primary plan is $18 a month for them to use that, and it has co-pays. So I think this year TRS did a really good job, my opinion, doing what they did, getting rid of the select and opting with the primary and the primary plus plan. I have not seen or not have heard any employees complain about it. But granted, I haven't really had a lot of communication because of the situation we're in right now.
Right.
Because the plan year starts September 1.
Correct.
So we're not even a month in. But the demographic issue was the primary, that was the biggest issue for everybody. There was a certain, you had, 3 options last year, and one of those options was basically off the table for anyone that lived in Seguin, unless you were going to take an entire day off just to visit a doctor, because the only way you could get to one would be if you went to San Antonio or Austin. Well, I don't even know if Austin managed, if you San Antonio.
It's awesome.
But that was us.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so taking that demographic issue out of it probably we really do feel like it, and that's one of the more cost-effective plans too. It's not an extremely expensive plan, correct?
The primary plan, the new one, right, that's the one that's $18 a month for employee only.
Yeah.
And they did drop some of the premiums on the employee and children and employee family. They dropped those a little bit. Now, the Active Care 2 is their premier plan, but that's only, that's a closed plan. You can only keep that plan if you've been on it. It has no new participants in it. Now, that one's a little bit more expensive, but that's like their gold plan. But like I said, that one's closed. So a new employee would only be eligible for our HD plan, our primary, and our primary plus plan.
The HDD and the high deductible?
Yes.
No, I have heard some good things about it. I think before Don left also she mentioned that this was one of the first years that the prices were going to be a little bit lower. But as far as, I can speak on the HD plan, because I know it's pretty comparable to what they offer where I work, for a technology company. So overall, I think most insurance companies are trying to head that way to the high deductible.
Any other questions, comments?
Thank you.
Thank y'all for coming up
Appreciate it.
here.
Of course.
And
Thank
thank you,
y'all.
Tony, for navigating us
Absolutely.
through this very complicated topic. All right, moving on in our agenda, we have the Bond 2019 project update. Mr. Lewis.
President Thomas Jimenez, Board, Dr. Gutierrez, thanks for allowing me to present tonight. A lot of you were able to tour the stadium yesterday, so that was kind of the highlight of this presentation. Really was the live portion. So I'll go fairly quick through this. You know, our first part is our stadium that we have received occupancy on. That doesn't mean it's done or completely finished. They're over there working tonight, trying to finish up some things for substantial completion in the next few days. And then, of course, there's going to be there's a list of items that need to be fixed, tweaked, those kind of things that could go on. For a few months, it could go on depending on the type of fix it needs to be, not to interrupt the services as they go on at the stadium. If there needs to be a fix in one of the parking lots, that might be something that has to wait until we reach a point where access in the parking lot doesn't disturb games and events and those kind of things. So the timing on some of those will be good. You saw yesterday, the track and field have been turned over to district use for a while. They've been using them. Our home side bleachers are substantially completed. Ticket booths, the restrooms. I think everybody ran to see what the restrooms looked like last night. Yes, there are restrooms, and so there's a lot of them. Concession stands substantially completed. Concourse site work. You notice there's no dirt, so there's no grass around there. Keep it clean. No standing water in the grass, those kind of things. Press box exterior was substantially completed. They're doing a few things still in the press box tonight and getting those things cleaned up and ready to go. But the stadium will be ready for Friday night and host visitors and fans, visiting teams in our stadium. Tickets, like Dr. Gutierrez said, ticket sales are going and going well. First year doing online ticket purchases for our stadium. It's going pretty well. Do you have any questions about the stadium? Anybody want to, as we go along, anything stadium-wise? We did have a meeting today with police and maintenance team just to talk about how we're going to run the game and where people will be stationed and staying, where people will be stand and move, the ambulance parking and all those kind of things as we move on. Anticipating hopefully some press on Friday night, maybe even something from San Antonio, go to the stadium, maybe we get some good press and some visiting folks.
That'd be great. So in the parking lot, we've got the two lanes that go out right by the ticket booth. Is one of those lanes going to be closed? I just always found it dangerous with cars driving through and people are moving over.
No, they're not necessarily closed right there, but we do have walkways, and now there's a large concourse for people to step onto and not, before you had to stand in the road.
Right.
But there's no more, cross the street and you'll be able to stand in the concourse area, that's the walk-up area.
Okay.
So there won't be people standing in the street. So, but we do have parking, there's handicap parking that's been added right across from there as well. There will be some movement. That lot fills up pretty quick.
It does.
They're not going to be able to go around the building, so you can't come from behind and move up. So you come into that parking lot, you'll come in and park, and there won't be traffic flowing from the back to the front anymore. We're shutting off the road between the front and back of the building, so where the kids go into the locker rooms, so that nobody can pass there. And so if you do that, you don't have a lot of cars trying to come from back and then kind of circling around.
Dropping students off, I guess.
Yeah, if you have people that are parking in the back.
They can walk up to the
They
front.
can walk.
Yeah, it's
The gates
open.
will be
It's open walk. We're just cutting it off traffic between down the side of the building. Do have our AJB project. We really don't have any update from the last time that we got here. We had just had some meetings on design at that point, and so those have gone back or being put into into the plans, and then those will be brought back to us. I believe October 2nd is our next big meeting on AJB to talk about the next steps. Some of the things, you know, that we look through and that we've added or made these plans have built around are those grade level houses, dedicated space for collaboration, redesign that library space, and everybody's pretty excited, pretty happy with our new library space that came out of our design meetings. Teacher resource and support spaces, real prominent front entry, secure vestibule, things that really will make the front of that school stick out and know, hey, here I am, I'm at Breezy, and this is the front, and I know where to walk in. So it's a big thing, just kind of like with the high school before. It was kind of difficult before to know where the front of the high school was, and now we have kind of just all funnels right to the door now. We do have our 100% schematic design. We're about 50% on our construction documents. We've gone through a lot of our interior design. Our inspiration is kind of the wood and the trees and the greens and some of the more earth tones throughout the building. Again, as we showed most of these last time, but that's going to kind of be the theme throughout the building. Just a little bit of our classroom space. We showed all these last time. Hallways, putting that wood, kind of that natural wood. We're going to use some wood from the trees that are on the property throughout the building and some of the design. Good to still have the big open corridors. Great learning spaces. Do a little touch-up update on our athletic spaces. Some of the things we have moving forward. Again, our goal is to this fall, before the end of the year, is get our documents out and have that. We'll very soon here, maybe as soon as the next meeting, we'll talk about our construction method and selecting construction method. If we have to, I can't remember if we have to do that. We'll talk about it and make sure that everybody's up to speed on the process we are going forward, what that'll look like with taking bids and selecting contractors and stuff moving forward. And so we can start that project in the start of the new year, 2021. Any questions about AJB? It's kind of pretty much the same as last time. I don't think we didn't really have anything new on this one to present moving forward. We do have Jefferson starting as well. Again, it coincides with the AJB project. Looking at some these buildings, doing some upgrades on these buildings with mechanical, restrooms, making a connection between the buildings, placing some HVAC systems that are very, very outdated. Roof repairs is needed going forward. Again, our target dates are the same as AJB to put those projects out there together for people to bid on one or the other, or have the option to bid on both projects at the same time. Hopefully we can get a good deal on that. It's just kind of a rendition of connecting those two buildings there without that big dead space in the middle on the outside. You know, I was at the end with that front picture of Breezy because it's going to be great. I'm so excited about this project. I think even more so than the stadium, just because
it looks so different.
It does. It looks very different, and we're really excited. Mr. Pisani has done a good job. Just want to point out and give him a shout out over at the stadium, just really staying on top of things and putting his foot down when he needed to put his foot down, and you know, putting the clamps on some people here and there just to make sure things are in the right place. So really owe it to him that we're back to substantial completion and going to be able to host a game this Friday. He's really done a good job staying on top of things. So
Yes, he has.
appreciate him for that.
Any questions or comments? We're just excited.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, next up in our agenda, we will go into closed session. We're going to adjourn pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Opens Meeting Act. Texas Government Code 551.071, 551.074, 551.129, which is consultation with legal counsel, including possible telephone consultation, as necessary to address legal concerns, implications, and answer any legal questions regarding posted agenda items. Also, Texas Government Code 551.074 to discuss personnel matters, including appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of an employee. And Government Code 551.072 to discuss the sale, purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. It is 7:20, and we will be going into closed session at this time. Okay. It is 8:06, and we're going to reconvene to open meeting, and we will be taking no action. So moving on to item 7, it's our consent agenda items. The VE local states that consent agenda items shall include items of a routine and or recurring nature grouped together under one action item. All such items shall be acted upon by one vote without separate discussion unless a board member requests that an item be withdrawn for individual consideration. The remaining items shall be adopted under a single motion and vote as applicable. Mr. Jenkins and I are going to share reading these out loud. So we have the approval of board minutes of the regular meeting, August 25th, 2020. Approval of tax collection reports for August 2020. Approval of proposed budget amendments and financial statements for August 2020. Approval of district-wide vehicle maintenance parts and services, which is RFP 21-01. Approval of district-wide HVAC systems maintenance, equipment repairs and services, which is RFP 2102. Approval of district-wide plumbing systems maintenance, equipment parts and services, RFP 2103. Approval of district-wide facilities maintenance, electrical equipment parts and services, RFP 2104. Also, the approval of district-wide special education services, which is 2105, RFP 2105. The approval of authorized representatives for First Commercial Bank, Lone Star Investment Pool, Tex Pool, Logic, and Texas Class MBIA. The first reading for consideration or approval of local district update, LDU-EIC and FM. Approval to purchase rigor and relevant staff development sessions and coaching days for 2021 through 2020 through 2021 school year.
Consideration for payment of $277,000 to Tangram Rehabilitation Network Incorporated for contract services provided by Res Care Premier at Texas Hill Country School. 7M, consideration of approval for certified appraisers for 2020-2021. 7N, information regarding an interlocal agreement with communities and schools for integrated student support services. 7O, information regarding a purchase of milk products for Seguin ISD from Borden Dairy Company to the Texas 20 Purchasing Cooperative. 7P, information regarding the purchase of paper products for Seguin ISD from Gulf Coast Paper to the Texas 20 Purchasing Cooperative. 7Q, information regarding purchase of staple food products for Seguin ISD from Avant Service to the Texas 20 Purchasing Cooperative. 7R, information regarding the purchase of bread products for Seguin ISD from Flour Baking Company to the Texas 20 Purchasing Cooperative. 7S, information regarding the purchase of iPads for the Special Education Department from Apple to the DIR Purchasing Cooperative. 7T, information regarding the purchase of Frontline for Seguin ISD from Frontline Education to the Allied States Purchasing Cooperative. 7U, information regarding the purchase of district wireless access points for Seguin ISD from Computer Solutions through the DIR Purchasing Cooperative. 7B, information regarding the purchase of digital curriculum for Seguin ISD from Apex Learning Incorporated through the Goodbye Purchasing Cooperative. 7W, information regarding the purchase of educational software for Seguin ISD from iStation through the 2013 Purchasing Cooperative. 7X, information regarding the purchase of Chromebooks for Seguin ISD from CDWG, through the PACE Purchasing Cooperative. 7Y, Public Information Act request August through September 2020.
Whew. All right.
We needed one more to have a Z. I feel incomplete.
It is the longest list I've seen. And I do want to give thanks to everybody on the leadership team for going into detail on each and every one of those. Would any of you like to see one of those pulled for individual consideration? If not, do I hear a motion for approval of consent items? Ms. Crittenden has given us a motion, seconded by Mr. Amador. No further questions. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Moving on to our action items. Under 8A, we have consideration and possible approval of an order by the Board of Trustees for the Seguin Independent School District authorizing the issuance of Seguin Independent School District unlimited tax refunding bonds, taxable series 2020, levying a continuing direct annual ad valorem tax for the payment of the bonds, delegating the authority to certain members of the Board of Trustees and district staff to execute certain documents relating to the sale of the bonds and other matters incident and related thereto. So, Mr. Hilbert, go again.
I suppose I came up a little early. Unless you finish reading. So it's good news. It's always, in these challenging financial times, it's always a pleasure to be able to report good news. This is on the bond investment front. We purchased bonds, or sold bonds rather, in 2014, and they have reached a certain benchmark that allows us some significant savings. And so to speak to that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Victor Quiroga. He is with, he's our financial advisor. I also want to make mention that we have with Norton Fulbright, we have Mr. Arnold Cantu. He does a lot of behind-the-scenes work. Even the statement, the action item that you just read, that's a small portion of some of the things that he does for us. It's quite voluminous, and he and Mr. Quiroga both really deserve our appreciation for what they do for us. So thank you both very much. But I'll turn it over to Mr. Quiroga.
Honorable President, members of the board, Dr. Gutierrez, thank you for having me here this evening. It's great to see everybody again. I do have copies if anybody wants any here, or you could have them afterwards, but we do have it on the screen here. We did bring with us some good news, or refinancing opportunities to save some taxpayer money. Part of our role as financial advisor is to help you issue new bonds for new projects like we're in the process of doing right now based off of last year's bond program, but we also monitor your existing or outstanding debt to see if there's any refinancing opportunities based on market conditions. So right now, interest rates are really at historically low environments, and I feel like I'm a broken record. I've been saying that for the last 6 years. It seems like they just continuously are going down. But right now we're in a very good opportunity or position because we could potentially refinance the district's Series 2014 bonds. We're looking at refinancing about a little under $45 million in bonds to achieve some savings. And so we brought forward a brief presentation. If you go to the next slide, or do I have control? Okay, thank you very much. So this will give you just a brief summary as to the refinancing, what that looks like right now. If we were to continue paying on these bonds, we have about $44.77 million to pay. Those are scheduled to be paid off in 2044. The interest rate that's locked in and fixed is a 4.5% interest rate. There could be a potential opportunity to refinance that as early as next week based on your action this evening and reduce that rate to about 2.36%. What that'll do is that'll generate interest cost savings to the district's taxpayers about $8.5 million. When we look at this, we look at the next value there, which is the present value savings ratio. It's about 14%. That's really unheard of. Normally, we like to see these refinancings achieve a present value savings ratio of 3%, and as that ratio is higher, it means it's a good, efficient, prudent refinancing for the board to consider. But on the right side there, I just want to show you that all we're doing here, ladies and gentlemen, is we're proposing to change a high interest rate for a low interest rate. We're not going to extend the final maturity of the original bond. We're still going to pay it off as scheduled there. So you can see that on an annual basis, we'll hopefully save about $350,000 per year until these bonds are paid off. And if you go to the next slide, Here, what the action that you're considering this evening is what we call a parameter bond sale order. Basically what that means is that you're allowing myself and staff to continue moving forward with this bond transaction, and then we, right now, on the calendar is to go into the market next week, lock in a lower interest rate, and so instead of having to plan around a board meeting or having you all meet again, under state law, you're able to provide this approval, and so long as we met minimum threshold savings, Dr. Gutierrez or Mr. Hilbert can sign the final documents and lock in a lower interest rate for the district. And so, so that's the action that you're considering this evening. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those for you.
That's amazing. I can say I'm in favor of saving our taxpayers a lot of
Yes,
money.
yes,
This
yes.
is pretty substantial.
Yes, it's a great opportunity.
No questions? All right, there's a motion here for someone. If anybody would like to make a motion, Mr. Amador? The second one.
I move that the Board of Trustees adopt an order authorizing the issuance of Seguin Independent School District Unlimited Tax Refunding Bonds, Taxable Series 2020, pursuant to a delegated sale.
All right, I have a motion. Do I hear a second? Ms. Duncan? All right. No further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you. We hope to bring back some good news.
so much.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Appreciate you. Wow. Good news. All right, next up is our action item 8B, which is our 2020-2021 compensation handbook recommendation. Ms. Moreno.
Good evening. We ask that the board approve the 2021 compensation handbook as recommended for all active district employees. We are continuing the very competitive starting teacher salary that we have at $51,000. New teachers hired to the district for this school year will be placed on the teacher pay scale based on confirmed years of service.
In the handbook, the things that are in bright yellow, are those things that have changed since last school year?
Yes, ma'am. Any changes from the last school year will be in yellow.
Did everybody get a chance to look at that? Do we have any discussion or questions for Mrs. Moreno?
And just to clarify, any teachers that were on a certain step on the teacher's pay scale will change to the next pay level. So for example, if a teacher had 3 years last year, now she's going to move, or he will move to the 4th year.
I had one.
Okay.
To clarify for the public, can you explain what specialists are and what mentor teachers and trailblazers?
Okay, specialists, it depends on what kind of specialist you're talking about. It's usually associated with a certain pay grade and a scale.
So let's say like an elementary math specialist.
Okay, so an elementary math specialist would be district-wide, working at the elementary level, and that would be the person in curriculum that would be dealing with math for the elementary levels. So it's a district-wide position. Your other question?
The mentor teachers and the trailblazers.
Mentor teachers are teachers that are assigned to a brand new teacher. Usually a teacher that has less than 3 years in the classroom. This teacher spends time with them, does trainings with them, does planning. It's just their go-to person that they go throughout the year. Trailblazers are a position that we had a few years ago that we're phasing out. A trailblazer is kind of like a glorified grade level lead. Back in the day, there was a lot more of assignments that were given to the trailblazer, but now as the years have progressed, we're seeing that there's really not a need for that level of supervision at the grade level position, so now we're just strictly going with grade level leads.
grade level leads, are they about what, I didn't notice that.
Yes, ma'am, it's in the elementary stipends.
Do you have any idea what page that is?
Yes, ma'am, page 14.
Which is also page 139.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, we had noticed that the elementary math specialist position.
Yes, that's a new position.
And I think one of the questions that you may be wondering is, well, we've not heard anything about a salary increase, and yet we're talking about this, the compensation handbook, which we approve every year, and of course we make changes as new positions are added or adjustments are made with positions. One of the things that we are able to do right now, and a lot of districts are just completely freezing their salaries, is our teachers are going to be able to move a step. But it's just our teachers, no one else, there are no steps. But teachers more or less go into their role knowing they're always going to move up a step every year. So they are going to move up a step, which is going to equate to a few $100s. And with so many unknowns with COVID, we are not going to be bringing the board a recommendation for a salary increase because that is a recurring cost, and that we want to be very careful with, because we don't know what staffing would look like next year. Hopefully things are back to normal, but I'll let Mrs. Moreno talk a little bit about what we are looking to do, because we certainly do want to reward our staff, especially teachers, for the work that they're doing, because everyone has really taken on additional responsibilities, and we want to acknowledge and recognize that work.
Well, Tony, if you want to come up, we've talked a little bit about the different options that we're going to have available.
Yes, we've run some preliminary numbers, so we have some ideas of what different one-time scenarios would cost, and we'll look to provide that information to you when we have a better idea. Even just as recently as today, we are getting some enrollment numbers, at least in finance, that we can use as a basis for where do we think funding is going to go for the year. So with that being such fresh information, we need a little bit of time to process that and then provide you with some thoughts. In conjunction with that, we will be wrapping up our financial audit. We should be preparing that for most likely the November, possibly as late as December board meeting. During that time, we'll not only have a good idea of revenue estimates for 2021, but we'll also have a really good idea of where we landed in terms of fund balance for the prior year. And so those one-time costs can sometimes be used. Fund balance is a good use of those. I'm not making any suggestions right now, but those are some of the things that we are definitely looking at. So does that cover sufficiently?
Okay, thanks. Didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just have a feeling there are a lot of employees out there who are wondering, so appreciate it.
Mr. Hilbert, if I may ask, you said that you would know towards the end of the year the amount, where our balances is.
Well, so what we'll know by the end of the year is where we are on fund balance. And when we went through the budgetary process for this year, there were a number of things, aside from wages, there were a number of things that were put on the table to just see where we would land in terms of operations, or they were attributed to possible uses of fund balance. So we need to look at all of those costs. And we're also, even as we speak, Kirsten can certainly, or Ms. Legore rather, can certainly attest to the fact that there are unanticipated costs associated with PPE and all the safety and sanitation things. So all of that needs to be considered when we're looking at fund balance. Then we can start to look at also, can we take some of that and use it toward a one-time payment? And if so, to what extent can we do that? But we need to quantify fund balance before we can really give you, what that's going to look like.
Do you have a guess as to when that might happen?
when it might happen?
For you to have the information and then decide whether how much you can afford.
Well, if I'm just gonna guess, then I'm gonna say the November board meeting. You know, I think it's very attainable that we get it done by November, and I know that, that is something that Dr. Gutierrez would really like to see as well, and you. But we also have to keep in mind that there are some federal guidelines that are ever evolving, and that is on many, many fronts, and audit is not excluded from that. So even our auditors are suffering some delays right now as a result of federal compliance rules that they don't have. And so they just simply cannot complete the audit. So without that, we may have to bring some preliminary estimates with the understanding that they're not official. And I have no problem with that at that point in time. And if we get to the point in November where that's where we are, I can at least share with you how confident I am in fund balance, if it's a compliance issue with an audit. Fair enough? So I think at least by November, we should be able to give you a better idea of, can we be comfortable with these numbers, and then give you some estimates.
Any further questions? If not, do I hear a motion for the recommendations set forth for our 2020-21 compensation handbook? And a motion for approval, Mr. Guerra. Do I have a second from Mr. Amador? Some further questions or discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 7-0. You're still on hot seat. So it looks like we have some elections and resignations to take a look at.
Yes, ma'am. The Board of Trustees, if you will please recognize and acknowledge the new professional hires for this school year. We have 6 hires, and of these hires, 5 are a minority. Mr. Philip Razor has 7 years that he's coming to Seguin ISD with. The others, you'll notice that they are brand new teachers coming in. Late hires, we usually see brand new teachers coming in. But we're excited to have them.
I am excited to see these. Any questions from anyone? I'm taking a look. Yes, Mr. Guerra.
So, do we currently have any more openings as far as
Yes, sir.
teachers lost?
Yes, sir, we do. We still have a few openings. We have one at Kennedy, we have one at the high school, and one at Jim Barnes.
Thank you.
We're making progress.
Yes, we're chipping away.
Mr. Jenkins, you have a question? No? Thumbs up, all right. Do I hear a motion for approval? Mr. Amador, second from anybody? Ms. Moreno? No further questions or comments? Everybody in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, same sign. Ben, did you raise your hand? Okay. Y'all moved too fast for me today. Okay, motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Ms. Moreno. All right, before we leave this evening, are there any board comments or requests? Y'all a quiet bunch this evening. Okay.
Because we're all dressed up.
Yeah. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Mr. Amador. A second from Mr. Jenkins. All in favor? It is 8:29. This meeting is adjourned.